Welcome to the HU Move Makers podcast, where we highlight folks that are blazing the trail and making moves in Howard culture. Hello and welcome to the HU Move Maker podcast, where we highlight Howard folks that are making moves and setting trends. Today, we got a very special guest in the house, a media mogul, a seasoned brand manager, general manager. She's known for driving transformative growth among existing and emerging brands. Can you help me out? Because my followers is lacking. We talking about the NBA, Drake, CoverGirl, Shea Moisture, Nubian Heritage, Madam CJ Walker. She now heads up BET, Chief Marketing Officer, Executive Vice President for ViacomCBS. If you watch Squawk Box, you'll see that their stock was doing their thing yesterday. She got her bachelor's degree in communications from Howard University, MBA from Clark, top marketing executive to watch, nationally recognized for addressing childhood literacy, $100 million New Voices Fund in support of women of color entrepreneurs. Ladies and gentlemen, Kimberly Paige, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, for sure. So, Miss Paige, people say, why go to a black college? The world is not black, but yeah, here you are, Chief Marketing Officer, got your bachelor's from Howard, MBA from Clark. What do you say to those people?
I say, why not, right? I say, for me personally, Howard was the only university I applied to.
Really?
So there was never, my mom ended up later submitting something for Spelman, but for me, it was the only choice. I just think, what's so interesting is that now, everyone's having an HBCU love fest, which is great. But I think for many of us and generations have known just the value of, the overall experience, because it's not just about the degree, but it's the overall experience. And I think many of us, we're always, kind of searching for that connection, that community, that real, tethered back to something that really makes us feel, true and whole and all of those things. And I think that for anyone not to seriously consider, I understand people make different choices and decisions, but for me, it was an easy one. And something that I think really, set the foundation, for me. And I have a daughter there who's a junior. So,
Oh, really?
the legacy continues. But I just think that, the experience of what you'll get personally, by way of just the connections and the friendships. But yeah, you leave there feeling, like you can conquer the world. And we know, especially in the business arena, that confidence is 90% of it, and so for me, just knowing that I could sit at the table with others and not only compete, but obviously exceed, expectations and results. And so, I have nothing, good to say, nothing but good things to say about, my personal experience.
That's awesome. And I'm glad you said that, because I remember coming home from college and getting in this debate with some of my friends that went to like Big Ten schools. And,
Yeah.
y'all only got one cafeteria. You hear all those jokes.
All of that.
Yeah.
That just makes you, resilient, resourceful. Listen, you got to figure it out. I think, that's why they call it the Howard Hustle, right?
Absolutely. So currently you are the Executive Vice President, Chief Marketing Officer for BET Networks. How does one get to that level where, because when I read your bio, it's boom, it's no backward steps. It's, what's next? How do you do something like that? And it wasn't just with BET. It was your work with Sundial, with Coca-Cola. Tell me what's the secret sauce?
For me, I've always had this kind of insatiable curiosity about things, why people do what they do, buy what they buy, don't buy certain things, what inspires, what motivates them. And so probably if I didn't go into marketing, I would probably be a psychiatrist or something. I don't know. But, I had this thing, even in the School of C, where for me, it wasn't necessarily about, being in front of the camera, but I've always, wanted to understand the business side of things. regardless of wherever I landed, wherever I, whatever industry I encountered, even from a marketing communications, my first question is always, how do we make money? How do we lose money? And, oftentimes people are very shocked that, well, you're the marketing person. What do why do you want to know? And so for me, it was always about understanding the business of the business, regardless of the function that you sit in. Because even as a brand builder, as a marketer, if you understand that context, as you're thinking about the art and the science of what you're doing, trying to build these amazing brands, you understand, how to unlock revenue, how to drive revenue. And I think that's been part of, if I had to say kind of my secret sauce is I've always done, the homework to understand the business that we were in. And then through marketing, through, bold ideas, through being creative, through understanding the analytics of the business, was able to really unlock new ideas and new territories of growth, and really kind of doing that, from industry to industry to industry. So, had, the amazing opportunity to have internships while I was at Howard. First internship was with an advertising agency in Chicago. And that was kind of my first formal introduction to, the ad world, to businesses, to, advertisers, and got to really see kind of the nuance of, how you market and sell a product. And, I kind of basically caught the bug and kind of said, there's something to this notion of brands, right? The value that certain brands hold versus others, and was just super intrigued. So even, so started to really just decided for me personally that I wanted to go more that route. And once that decision was made, it was easy. I was like, well, if I'm going to go into brand, I got to go to Procter and Gamble, that, still to this day known, for, their training and development of people. And, quite honestly, 20 something odd years later, I still draw on a lot of those, principles and foundational elements of what it means to get people excited, what it means to reignite a brand, what it means to, have, a consumer, buy your product versus another, or watch your show versus another, et cetera. So
you were
I think, for me, just it's been, putting points on the board as soon as you can when you get into an organization, but more importantly, just kind of showing up with a sense of a point of view and compassion, and really being able to work in a I think, kind of a leadership way, but really, true collaboration. And I really tout some of those relationships that I've built over the years as, secrets to, why, I've been successful. And then I would just say, finally, I've always had a knack for hiring great people. So for me, it was always about hiring great people, the team. So, definitely did not get here alone, for sure.
So you mentioned that you've made an interesting comment. You said when you get there, you make sure you put some points on the board. For me, when I got into corporate America, it was a struggle for me. I just coming out of Howard, I was just like, yo, this is not it. You know what I mean? But I did have friends that were like, they was like killing it. I was like, damn, like how are y'all in here just getting promotion after promotion? And it sounds like to me, you've been intentional, like since day one. It wasn't like you got in there and you were like deer in the headlights. You were like, okay, I'm gonna
I trust. I mean, it all wasn't easy. So, you just have to take on this notion of, kind of win or learn, right? So for me, any loss that I had, I just took it as a point to kind of quickly pivot, learn, and kind of get back up. So there were some difficult moments for sure. And I think to your point, you come into these environments, you're trying to navigate the whole politics of it all. And, to me, the unlock was, especially coming into, something as rigorous and disciplined as a P&G, where you feel like you've got to show up a certain way. I would say the biggest game changer for me was probably 10 years into my career when I said, at the end of the day, I'm going to be me because that's all I know how to be. And that it removed all of these other things, these filters. And so my voice was clear. I knew, even, when I was 100% sure, I had started to build this kind of innate sensibility and gut about what was going to hit with impact. And so the ability to use data, but then use my insight around what I felt was going to connect with culture, with consumers, that was a game changer. And so, I know it sounds so cliche when people say, show up as your whole self. That was a game changer for me, because no one could, doubt and argue my experience. Right. I was like, this is what I would want to see as a consumer. And here's the data, yada, yada, yada. And I think that's the difference. And that's hard. You have to, you have to get there on your own timing, but it helps when you're winning. You get
Yeah.
you get a little bit more, breathing room, when they're like, well, you can't argue, like she's driving the results. So you got to do all of that. But I do think that having that authentic voice, because when you're showing up not being yourself, that's a lot of energy. So for me, that was kind of the unlock.
Did you ever have like that type of imposter syndrome? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I am. And again, it's just all blessing, right? Because I just growing up, the strength of, my parents, who always just poured into me about, it was never about, where I worked. It was more about who I served. And so again, just that clarity of what I felt was my purpose and my role, and not, really having those things kind of compete. And you're always, in certain situations where the congruence is always not going to be 100% there. But if you can stay true to, to your point around just kind of who you are, and kind of what purpose and what excites you. I mean, and so for me, as you can see, I spent so much time at Coke, and then went to, a number of other organizations. And I was just like, this is great. I'm learning. But, it just, I didn't feel like there was an aligned passion and purpose.
Hmm. So I was reading some interesting stats about BET, and 90 million households, approximately 90 million households get BET, and you are over that brand.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people that don't even interact with people of color, their only experience with us is through BET. I remember, just in high school, I went to all boy, all white high school, and that was their frame of reference for their interaction with me was
Right.
BET. And they was, even though they were sometimes insensitive, they were genuinely uh trying to connect with me through
Right.
BET, just naming TV shows like, hey, you watch this show, and and I'm like, okay. So anyway, so what is that like running having that type of responsibility, because you have that
Yeah.
balance of, you don't want us to sound like, you want to show the full Black experience, but you also have to you got to get viewership, you know?
Oh yeah, that's the business side of it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I am incredibly humbled to be the steward of this iconic brand, right? And so, the decision to join, ViacomCBS and specifically the BET network was one that was really kind of driven by a conversation, that I had, quite honestly, over the course of a couple of years with our president, Scott Mills, and was just really excited about his vision. Last year we experienced, it was the 40th anniversary of BET. And for me, I'm all about what's next. How are we going to really drive growth? And, I kind of said, what's on the table? How can we reignite energy, excitement around this brand? How can we reimagine it so that it is able to stand in the next 40 plus years? And so, there's, turn on any, channel, streaming service, et cetera. And everybody has Black content now, right? So if you look at the number of companies and, thankfully, which I think is great, that are all kind of, serving Black content and all those things. So we're definitely in a very dynamic and competitive marketplace. And I think, to me, the difference and why I made the decision to join was, I think about these iconic brands around Black media and the role that they played, to your point, around, many of us growing up, whether it was, the 106 in Parks to, Donnie Simpson, all of those things. I think, it has a unique role to play. And so the question then becomes, how do you continue to evolve, stay fresh, So, was super excited about, last year was the top performing, year of the network in its history. Like that's
Wow.
major.
Shout
We
out to
launched new
you.
shows, did stuff with Lena Waithe. I mean, it was just, we were really trying to, again, kind of, deliver programming that told the full story of us. We launched a streaming service, which is the number one streaming service for Black content. And I think, it's so, I take the responsibility seriously. I view it as an obligation, quite honestly, because I do think that, while there's so much Black content out there, I say, they want our rhythm, but they don't want our blues, right? So
Mm,
they want to serve content. And I think BET has always had a dual mission. Yes, it's been about content, but it's also been about changing outcomes for the community.
mm-hmm.
And there was never, and still is, there's never been a more important time for a brand that has the scale, and to your point, the ability to tell stories and narratives around what, I just, again, take 2020 as an example. What we stood up in terms of trying to really change outcomes for our community. That was huge. And so those are the things that excite me. I mean, I think, a week into COVID, we knew we were going to be hardest hit. Like when you say essential workers, or, you can work from home. Well, that's only 20% of the Black,
Mm-hmm.
community can work from home. So, we knew we were going to be on the front line. And then you say, okay, well, these underlying conditions, you're more, predisposed. And you're like, oh shit, like this is about to get real.
Yeah, for real.
So we didn't have to wait on all of these, reports to come out and tell us the disproportionate rates. Like we knew, unfortunately that, we were going to be hardest hit. So we, literally, 10, 12 days in, we started, you say, we got to raise money. We got to save ourselves. And that was literally, I literally, like we coined it, saving ourselves, COVID-19 relief. And in about 10 days, we raised about $18 million. And we sent that directly to the front line, about 44 organizations in, top, Black markets.
Oh, wow,
know
that's
who
nice.
they are. They're the Atlanta, the Detroits, the Chicagos, the LAs, New York, New Orleans. So we didn't filter through. We just said, here, what are the organizations that are truly on the front line trying to help? And so, it's things like that I say, when I say, yes, we do content, but yet we're changing outcomes, and we're standing up things. And whether it was the, conversations we were trying to have on the heels of George Floyd murder, or, we just launched, right on the heels of his murder, we launched a platform called Content for Change. Because, the reality is that, the media has played a huge role in perpetuating, stereotypes and racism by the stories they choose to tell or don't tell, by the images they choose to show or don't show. And even at BET, we felt like, we can champion something that really speaks to how do we even further lean into telling the totality of our story, right? The diversity of our story. And, literally within days, ViacomCBS as an entire, media organization said, we love this. We're gonna do this across the entire footprint. So now you're talking MTV, VH1, Comedy Central, Paramount Studios. I mean, it just ran the gamut. And so it's those things that kind of excite me. How do you go from activity to real impact?
Welcome to the Go Fish Village podcast. As a Chinese proverb says, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. At Go Fish, our goal is to teach individuals just like you how to build wealth through real estate. Wow, that is one great answer. So, no, I love
Talk
it.
about this stuff all day.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So, what is it like? I mean, since you come out of Howard, what is that, 4 years ago, to now, how much is like marketing changed? And I mean, with digital being so
Yeah.
much of a
Yeah.
part of the
Yeah.
footprint of how people get stuff out.
Yeah, I mean, you just said it. I mean, it's an on-demand world that we live in. So people want it when they want it, where they want it, and companies that can't pivot to understand that, they're dinosaurs and have closed shop. So yeah, and so the marketing has to follow suit, right? You have to figure out, how you're going to get to the person that, you're trying to engage with, beyond the right time, the right moment. But how do you personalize it? How do you start to, from that first moment of truth, which is a P&G statement, from that first moment of truth, how do you give them something of value, right? And so for me, it has definitely changed because, back in the day, it was really about this one-way communication. You put your message out there and you were like, okay, that's it. Now, if you're not having, the level of dynamic interaction with viewers, with consumers, with fans, and listening. Like, it's not just hearing, it's listening, and then it's acting, right? And so I think the marketing of it all has to be very much so kind of this kind of fluid circle where you're inviting participation in a real way. Like, I don't personally use the word target. I don't like that word. To me, target, when they say, well, who's your target audience? I'm like, well, what do you mean? Like, target is, as a term, sounds very predatory for me. Like, when you're being targeted, like, visualize you're in someone's crosshairs. They're like, okay, I want that, I want Joshua, and versus, how do you truly invite people to be a part of the brand or the experience? And so I say, who are we trying to invite? How do we invite consumers to be a part of this in a very meaningful way? How do we give them of something of value versus targeting is something just coming at you. And, we've all seen, ads and had, even from a personal standpoint, you've received messages that you felt like, okay, they just targeted me. Like, versus like, this is, oh, this is cool. This is a real invitation. Like, they get me. They've done their homework and they know kind of the things that are important to me. And that's where the marketing has gone. Like, there's such a level of data and analytics that you can have on any one person. And so to be smart about and precise about, the individual that you think your product, service, et cetera, can most benefit and versus kind of this kind of spraying it everywhere and losing dollars. So, there's been a lot of shift and I love it because I think, at the end of the day, the consumer's at the center and, someone in their basement can ruin your brand in, one tweet,
Yeah.
And so, you have to be constantly engaged, constantly learning, listening, and all those things. So it's really, really interesting time.
Yeah, I mean, back I remember growing up, BET, I mean, it wasn't that much competition. I mean, Video Soul was like that was like everybody's joint. Like, that was where you look to.
Right, right.
And because a lot of other stations weren't trying to really play Black music like that,
Yes,
I
yes.
mean, you got the basement, I remember watching that at Howard and 106 in Park. And then I want to say, I don't know what year Bob Johnson sold BET. Then it was like, oh man, they sold us out. I mean,
Yeah.
how do you like? I mean, you obviously it's a publicly traded company.
Yep.
So, how do you keep that, like, like Black Lives Matter movement
Yeah.
gain a ton of traction? Now, I'm sure you can't just be like, kill F the white man. You know what I'm saying? But like, how do you keep that genuine Black voice when you got shareholders?
Yeah, no, like I said, it's always about the business of the business, right? And
Always.
I think if nothing else, what I love seeing over the last, I would say 10 to 15 years is that consumers want to know where you stand, like on issues. If you don't have a point of view, if you're straddling the fence, you're not relevant. And regardless of, in Bob Johnson's hands or within, ViacomCBS, we're clear on who we serve, right? And to your point, from the first network creating this space and agency for us to just be, like, to be seen, to be celebrated, to be heard, all of those things, that has not changed, right? And so if we can stay true to that, which I think we really, like, we were working on all cylinders to do that last year, and I think the results stood for that. I personally have never shied away from having real direct conversations about anything as it relates to our consumers who we serve. We know them best. And, the good thing with ViacomCBS was when we usually say, this is what's happening with Black consumers, they're like, you are right, go do it, and oh, by the way, there's value in scaling it across all of our other networks. Cause to me, that's the win. If it's just BET doing it, then it's just BET doing it. But when you start to now amplify that now across, 200 million homes and, all this, like now that's the amplification. And quite honestly, I think that's the value of kind of the being within the ViacomCBS portfolio as much, I think, as, there's absolute, value in being Black owned. I'm not going to lie at all. But they're also, Shea Moisture Sundial, right as I took over as chief operating officer, had just been acquired by Unilever. Mm-hmm. And so, that's the beast. But I think, again, if you bring in a strong leader that's true to the DNA, true to the purpose, and you know that the cultural connection translate to commercial viability. And if you waver on that at all, regardless of where the ownership resides, you're going to lose. And so for me, it's never been a question of, if I, personally feel like I'm at a point where we're not doing what's right for our consumer, I'll leave. I won't be there. But thankfully, like I said, I think we all know the everybody's chasing Black. Whether you sell wine or widgets, I don't care. Yeah. Like, everybody's chasing Black. And, I often talk about, this concept of ROI. Not only do we return the investment, but there's an ROI, our return on influence. Like when we get behind a brand, like I don't care what budget you have, we will take that brand, the trajectory that we'll put behind that brand is really just beyond belief. And so there's value in, again, over serving our community in an authentic way that obviously educates, empowers, entertains, because, to your point, everybody wants to be, entertained as well. But you can do that in a way that really does land true to the purpose of what you're doing.
What's it like? Like you mentioned, 2020 in terms of revenues was one of you guys' best years, if not the best year. What's it like being a boss, Black woman, and being like, yo, I did that. Like, I grew up to this channel. Yep. I came in, I tweaked some things. You know what I mean? Like I did my Jay-Z. Like I you know what I mean? Like I did my Marcus Graham, I guess, because I see I got Boomerang on BET. But what's it like going in there, being a top performer, and just like slaying it like that?
Yeah,
when you work for a company like this, and the numbers just speak. You know what I mean?
The results always serve as a point of pride, and I think, as I talk to my team, if we focus on doing right by our consumers, we'll get the results. And, sometimes that's a direct impact. Sometimes you gotta, it's not a one-to-one kind of correlation. It may take time, but so it feels good. I'll say it feels good because I do believe that in this environment, of everyone, finally waking up to recognize us, the ability that, through an amazing team. So I will tell you, to me, one of the best things about coming to BET was just the amazing people that I'm able to work with day in and day out. Like, we rally. Like, if there's something going on, like there's this, it's like these superpowers activate and we get behind things. And so I've been so excited and proud of the team and what we were able to do remotely. I mean, it's wow. Just unbelievable. So it feels good. I mean, I think, for me, I'm always about, okay, you did that. Now you gotta do the next thing. Like there's just this constant, inspiration to continue to, elevate and take things to the next level. So I don't sit too long in it. I tell people on my team, don't take the highs too high and don't take the lows too low. Like, we're here focused to do what we got to do. Yes, we will always pause, celebrate, but there's so much more work to be done. So, it was a sense of energy for the next year, quite honestly.
What can you walk me through, like a day in the life of kind of what you do?
Yeah.
And not just from
I think so. It starts generally, obviously we're doing a lot of meetings, but I think, generally, We're looking at the programming grid, what's coming up. We're talking about, different campaigns. I'm reviewing creative. We're looking at, scripts, just so that we can understand the nuance of what the show is about, so we can try to put something into the marketplace that's super strong. I'm looking at the numbers every day. It's the points come in every day by way of your ratings, by way of your subscribers on our streaming service. So that's a big piece of it. Other days, depending on the timing of when a show is going to launch, we sit down with the producers of a show and talent, and kind of have a kickoff, and they kind of get us excited about the show. And we've got an amazing show coming out with Lee Daniels, and so a couple of weeks ago he sat down, he was talking about the show, and all of the talent was there, and they were so excited. And so as a marketer, you get pumped, right? And so you're like, okay, now I got it, we got it. And so the team goes away, and we kind of huddle and we talk about it. And then it's a lot, for me personally, really stewarding the team, right? So for my role at this point is about air coverage. So I'm trying to get us more money. I'm trying to ensure that the strategies align, and I'm trying to help build the team's capabilities. And so, I'm constantly kind of reviewing work and kind of providing input and direction on it. Having, one-on-one conversations around, I see what you're trying to do by way of insight here, but how do we kind of thread that insight all the way through? So there's a lot of coaching. Like most of my days are really about, things will land and I'm quickly reviewing. And so my point is how it comes in, usually really, 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 really good, if not great. I'm the last point, person to kind of say, what about this? And let's take it to this level, or have you thought about this? Or let me go kind of try to build a case. Let's try to get some more money and all those things. So it's a function, right? It's the business side, it's the talent relationship side, it's the amazing creative that we put out, and and the sheer number of assets that we have to produce in a week. It's mind blowing. I mean, honestly, I've been a part of media and danced around media all my entire life, but being in media, like in media, when someone passes, you're the phone starts going off, because the next morning you got to wake up with the tribute message, and
Wow.
you got the in memory to message, and all that comes through my creative team. When something happens in our community marketplace, we're immediately huddling. The news is kind of talking about what's the angle, what's the story, da 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 da. So it is a pace like no other. And so every day you gotta show up.
So how do you balance that with personal life? I mean,
it's been hard during the pandemic, I will tell you, because I think because everyone's home, you just feel like it doesn't stop. So the entire team's productivity has skyrocketed, but at the same time, you gotta disengage and take a moment. And so, when we first started this thing, I would say, guys, like, build in breaks throughout the day, because it's a lot, and especially the heaviness of what was going on. And we are fortunate that most of the people on the Zoom look like us, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there were so many personal stories and connections, and so there were tears on Zoom calls. So you could feel like the weight of the emotion, but at the same time the inspiration of what we were trying to do. I think for me, I started taking super long walks in the morning, working out, just trying to get my mind right. Now trying to block more time just for even just thinking, because this Zoom after Zoom after Zoom. And then with the team, I was, you can't even have a conversation anymore. Everybody has to be on camera full time. So I'm like, guys, let me just see you, because we have a lot of young, people in New York that live by themselves. I'm like, listen, I just need to see you, lay my eyes on you, make certain you're okay. And then, you can go off camera, but, sending a lot of care packages to people, so it's been a lot. But for me, I think, as with anything, I don't think it's ever really about balance, because I think it's hard, because my family will always come first. I think I try to have things exist in harmony. Like, if they can kind of orbit around each other and everything be okay, but this notion of something's 50-50, I don't think it's feasible. And I think it creates stress and burden. So, for me, even when my kids were young, I was like, mom's working. So you tell me what's important to you at school. Like, if you say these 5 things are important to you, I will absolutely be there. Now, the next 2 or 3, I may not be there, but so I was having those kind of conversations very, very early. So, they gave me grace and I gave them grace. And I think it's this notion of when you try to, be perfect and everything. I think, and I've always brought them into the fold. So they know exactly what I do. Thankfully, like I said, my daughter is a junior at Howard, who's incredibly creative, a brilliant writer. So she's constantly, turning me on to new indie films and, so I never tried to create these hard, rigid lines between that. And kind of said, these things are going to have to coexist. So let's figure it out. Definitely dropped the ball a couple of times, but, I think net, the value of being able to, have real conversations, direct conversations. So they see me, up, many nights with laptop in bed. And I'm like, yeah, you're on draft 3. Like, this is version 13 of this deck. Like, go back. I don't care, so just really sharing kind of the realities of what I was, how I move and operate on a day-to-day basis and in connection to, I think their lives was, kind of, I think very, very huge for our family. And definitely, like I said, they kind of, and it doesn't hurt to take, my, at the time, my youngest son to, the all-star games back in the day. So, I would get definitely the mommy cool credits and, the Grammys and all that stuff. So that was always kind of cool when they were young. Now they're like, yeah, okay, whatever.
I was just going to ask, like, do your kids realize how big of a responsibility that you have in your career?
I think my daughter does. My son, I think he does. I mean, he's like, I think he just remembered all the VIP treatment. But I think at the same time, especially last year, I mean, I think, us standing up, these conversations around social justice and the murder of, innocent Black people and just having real conversations. And then him actually seeing 2 days later, kind of the outcome of what we did. Like, It was like, oh, wow. Like, that's like, you guys are really trying to drive impact and change. And so, yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that, it'll probably dawn on them a little bit, more so as they get into their own fields of career and study. But yeah, I think, they say that they're proud in different ways.
So you don't ever tell them, like, who you talking to? I'm of course. Chief Marketing Officer of BET. I've never been one to throw around a title at all, but I definitely, I say, who do you think you're talking to? For sure. I'm a Black Southern mom. So no. So how do you deal with, like when we come out of Howard, man, we had all these ambitions of, we want to be CEO tomorrow, how do you deal with, it's one thing to put pressure on yourself, but then it's a whole nother thing. Like once you finally get that position, it's a different type of pressure to maintain the brand that you created.
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
I would probably say, you mentioned it earlier. I think, there's like, what are the other things that inspire you, right? Where do you get your fuel and energy? I love everything about culture. I mean, I'm a foodie, I travel, I love music, art, blah, blah, blah. And so my passion around culture has helped me to be successful in what I do, right? And so I don't need to wait on a focus group like to tell me, what's current, what's hot and all that stuff. And so I think I just try to like challenge myself to stay as closely connected as I can. So I think that helps. I think, the other piece is, as I mentioned before, is, regardless of, if things don't quite work out, I've just built this thing. And again, I truly say it's a blessing. I just kind of take it for what it is. And I try to take a bit of a moment to try to learn from it. But I can't let things sit with me too long in that way. Mm-hmm. And so I try to, it's just kind of a win or learn mentality. And, I like to have fun. So I am surrounded by family and friends, love, like I said, love travel, love wine. Can't do a lot of that now in this environment, but I to the best that I can, I try to live a whole and full and active life. And so, if things don't go well in, the business, arena, it doesn't define who I am, nor is it my sole source of purpose and energy and joy. So um, that's the one thing that I try to coach, the young people on is like, this is a job, it's your career. And yes, it's important. But when you ever start throwing around titles and blah, 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 it just takes one time. And then, you don't have it. And now what? Then you're like, well, what are you riding on then? And so for me, I've always tried to show up as an authentic person who is with a high degree of integrity. I do what I say I'm going to do. And if things don't work out, the easiest thing to do is to get a job and start a business. So I take full comfort and confidence in my skills. So yeah, the days can be stressful, but I try to really manage them through kind of that lens.
What are some of the projects or maybe something in your career that you're most proud of?
Wow. I had a lot of fun on Sprite. I ran that brand for a very long time, nationally and internationally. We did some great things on that brand that I think by way of giving back to culture, a lot of the artists that we tapped in, the big artists today. And so there was this understanding of who was next and to really help advance those artists, not just by, putting them in a commercial, but really helping to advance them and giving them a national stage. So I was always really, really proud of that work. One really fun project that I still kind of laugh and talk about today is when was working with LeBron for many years, and he had been with Coke since he left high school and started the league. But I was just kind of, for me, I have a search and reapply. All big ideas don't have to be original. So I was like, you partner with Nike, you go into, they call Nike the kitchen to make the shoes. You go into the kitchen to make your shoes. Why don't you make a new Sprite? And he was like, yeah, whatever. You guys aren't going to really sell it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no. Honestly, like, what if you made your own brand? That was, I can't even tell you how many years ago, but it just a joy to see, because he was such a kid about it. Like, he had all his crew come into the R&D lab. They were tasting products and they had so much fun. And when we put that thing in the market, like from the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, the one can was selling for like $40 on eBay. It was just kind of crazy. But just having great, a lot of just fun, quite honestly. I'd always tried to bring a sense of excitement to what we were doing. But I would say ultimately, I'm most proud of my ability to hire and promote so many Black individuals over my career. So I can sleep really, really well at night because I know the hard conversations and the fights that I was having in some of these rooms around people and their talent, and seeing them for what they were, and the substance versus the style, and all of that. And like, there's a whole community, and I look at them now and all the amazing things that they're doing. So I think honestly, that's what I'm most proud of.
How do you go about like, if let's say I have a show or something, or an idea that I want to pitch to BET, like, what advice do you have to that person that is a creative and wants to partner with a BET?
Yeah. So the good thing right now is Black content makers are getting major deals, right? And looks and things like that. So I would say, first you got to just make certain that the concept is tight. You don't have to, complete it all the way through, episode, various episodes. But what's the summation? What's the log line? What is it about? Why is it different from anything that's on the air? What's kind of the mood and the vision for it. And I think content makers who can really come in a very, inspirational, but really tight, concise way, talk about, this needs to be told. This narrative needs to be seen. And, and a lot of that goes through a variety of different people. Like, that's the beauty of BET. Like ideas come from everywhere. Obviously, we have a programming team, 3 amazing women who are just geniuses, quite honestly, on our scripted, our unscripted, and then our music specials. So all of our kind of biopics that we do, whether it's, the New Edition story or the Chronicles, all that stuff. So there's 3 people. They usually are out in the marketplace, pandemic, because they've been in the business for a while. They're constantly getting concepts and ideas thrown at them. Film festivals, you go, you see something, you're like, whoa, that's crazy. Like, we go to those festivals with the intent of finding young emerging talent, young emerging Black talent specifically. I've teed up a couple of concepts that have come my way. We generally, if there's something in consideration, our leadership team, again, I think it's a function of the way that our president operates and the team and how we really interact and support one another. They'll just kind of bring it to the table, like, hey, here's an idea. And people are like, oh, wow, blah, blah, blah. And he'll say, go vet that, go get us some more details. And then, you start working with finance, putting the budget against it. And if, it feels like it's a strong, viable thing, we usually try to advance it. Digital has been a great place for us to pilot certain concepts. And then move them to kind of a linear streaming platform.
Mm-hmm.
So it runs the gamut. But I will tell you, I mean, social media. A lot of people use social media. Like, there's nuances of how we can receive content, because we don't want people to say, "Oh, that was my idea." But I'm always amazed at how it always gets to wherever it's supposed to get to. But yeah, there's a programming team who generally receives a lot of these concepts and, work with, from the big to the emerging kind of producers out there.
Nice. So why Howard? What made you go to Howard?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, my dad is originally from DC. So I had the, pleasure of going to DC, even though I grew up in Atlanta. We would go to DC for certain moments. And I just always thought the city was amazing. It was like this nuance between kind of Atlanta and New York, clearly a media hub. And at the time, I really was going to go more in the strict kind of media communications role. And when people ask that, it's almost like I don't even know what to say, because Howard is just Howard. Like, and you think about all of the amazing people that have walked that yard and that campus. And it's just something that just struck with me. Definitely I went to a homecoming when I was a junior in high school. I was like, oh, wow. So between all the other stuff that I had done and realized, and I knew that I wanted to be, in a city, because even then, back then, Atlanta was like a cool, like, town, but it wasn't like a city. And I still think like we're just still starting to try to get into kind of the city of Atlanta, but I knew it felt small for me at the time, quite honestly, when I was leaving high school. So I was like, I want to go, and I've always, like, for me, like, champion Black. I was like, I want to go here because of here. And I love that it's in DC and blah, blah, blah. So, like I said, it was the only school I applied to, which I thought about that this morning. I was like, wow. Like,
it was the only school you applied to.
If my kids came to me and said that, I would be like, are you crazy? You gotta apply to school. No, honestly.
Wow. So what was it like when you got to Howard? I mean, can you kind of paint the scene, what it was like?
Yeah. So, we had the campus pals. We had.
I was a campus pal.
Were you? I can see you being a campus pal. You had the campus pal, and you're just walking, like, in wonder, like, where have I landed? I lived in the quad. Sadly, was one of 4 triples. I ended up being in a triple.
Oh, man.
It was horrible.
Really?
Horrible. But I always take on the position. I'm always where I'm supposed to be. Like that, that's always been, my motto. I'm like, I'm always where I'm supposed to be. But it was cool. But it was just amazing, quite honestly. I think, such a large percentage of the students from Howard, come from, mostly, predominantly white, schools, which was definitely, kind of my case. And just being around all that, Black love and joy and pride, it was inspiring. And, as I'm certain, same for you, some of my best friends, I mean, I still, to this day, have such strong relationships with people from Howard.
Were you involved in any organizations on campus?
I didn't pledge. I worked for WHUR for a second, and then I was the marketing manager for the Hilltop newspaper.
Okay.
And then one year I served on homecoming committee. But yeah, I spent a lot of time, down at School of C. And then, I generally worked. I mean, I worked at a local ad agency there. I've been working since I was 14. So a lot of people don't even like, they're like, you went to Howard? I was like, I was working. But yeah, it was just this amazing thing, right? And I think it's hard for people to understand it until you experience it. And I think, seeing it through my daughter's eyes, she was like, oh, wow. Like, I just found my tribe. Like, that was exactly like her words. Like 2 weeks in, I was like, 2 weeks. She's like, yeah. She was like,
Wow.
I have found my tribe. Like, and I think that's, what most kind of think. But yeah, the quad, and that was it. I didn't stay on campus after that. I was like, I have done my due with this triple. So the remaining years I lived off campus.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine having a triple. I had a single as a freshman, a
No,
triple. I
but
could
you were
not.
very lucky. And it's so funny because one of my roommates is still a friend of mine. I don't know how we did it. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, honestly, there are 4 triples in this entire quad, and I ended up in one. I was just like, I'm good. So my parents were like, okay, yeah, you can move out.
Man, so at Howard, what were your career aspirations when you were at Howard? Did you always have this belief that you would be a
No.
top marketer?
I just knew I thought it was going to be more of a traditional communications like path, whether it was, broadcast journalism or PR. But like I said, after that first internship, I was like, oh, no. I want to be on the back end of this. Like I saw the business side of it. I was like, no, so I started like really probing around advertising, and then in the ad space, I was like, oh, that's cool. But I was like, oh, they don't make a lot of money. I was like real clear. Then I said, but the source of the money is through the brands and the advertisers. So, okay. So I had to kind of follow the trail, and then said, I love being creative. I love numbers. I love the data. And so to me, the marketing kind of just really took over quickly because it was more about the art and science of it. So
what was your major at Howard?
Broadcast journalism.
Okay, broadcast journalism. Okay,
And then I was a
I can
business
see that.
minor.
Oh, okay. So that's School of C.
Mm-hmm.
So were you with Miss Dudley? Do you know her?
I don't think so.
Okay, no, because a lot of people from the School of C always talk
Yeah.
about.
And I will
Miss
tell you
Dudley.
my one trait, which will be a lifelong. I'm so bad with names. I am amazing with faces. But I do remember a professor there at the time who really introduced me and really took me out on, there's a local ABC station there. Had an internship there. So I am incredibly thankful for the people who, just kind of, put that extra time and attention into me. And that's why I think I'm so committed about doing it for others.
So at what point in your career did you I know you talked about showing up as yourself. What was like the aha moment that helped you find your voice?
I think there were 2. And again, it sounds so cliche, but people, that whole talking over you, like, you came up with this idea, and then, a week later you see it reskinned as something else, and someone kind of positioning, sharing it as theirs. Like, there was a moment I was just in this meeting, I was like, almost like, I didn't use those words, but I was in my head like, not today. This is not going to happen today. And but I did it through a way that the person ended up feeling great about it. And I think that's the grace and the nuance of how I try to really manage relationships. But it was like, if this, like, the person was probably 4 levels over me at the time. And I'm thinking, if this person thinks so much of my work to take it, then I must be really good, honestly. And I was like, okay,
Oh wait, they took your work?
Yeah. I mean, they kind of, like I said, they reskinned it, but I was like, okay, that's my idea. I shared that idea like a couple of weeks ago, and it was shot down, blah, blah, blah. And then a couple of weeks later, the idea is now represented with this senior executive. And I was like, So I started probing, asking questions about inspiration. What was the insight? And he was kind of fumbling a bit. But I did so in a way that at the end of the day, the idea got out and it was great. And it was, so for me, it wasn't about who got the credit. But I said, for me personally, it was, okay, I know I'm bringing something of value to the table. And then I just started being very intentional about how I would kind of tee up ideas, present ideas so that they were never too far away in the sense of where, like, the origin and where they came from. And that's like a crazy skill that you have to just kind of quickly understand and adapt in these large corporations. So I think after that, it was like this nod, like, okay, not only do you belong, but you are really bringing value to the table. And then I think, the other one is funny. I talk about this a lot. We were doing a basketball shoot with LeBron in Miami, and I got to set, and they had, a basketball choreographer, a stylist, all this stuff. And so they had hired all these guys, like, because it was a street game, ball game on the street, ball in Miami. And I saw the players, they all came out in like white socks and white tennis shoes. And I was like, I have nephews. They don't go play street ball in white socks and white tennis shoes, like little stuff like that. And I knew that was my experience. And so I would call the stylist over. I was like, that's not authentic. That's not how kids go, to play ball, like, in the neighborhood. And it got back to a couple of people and they were like, she's right. It's like, she's cool. But I was saying that because that was my point of reference with my nephews and how I saw them go play ball. And so it was, again, we often have a perspective that, so they would have shot that commercial and it probably would have been fine. Right. But at the end of the day, my voice mattered at that time. And I knew something so small could ultimately become so big. And we've all seen commercials where you're like, was no one Black in the room? Like, how did you do this? Right. And so I started to really recognize and value that, if I wasn't going to have a voice, I needed to give up the seat to someone else. And so that was kind of, again, kind of a small, it was such a small thing, but a personal experience that kind of unlocked my voice in some way.
Wow. No, that totally makes sense. And it's good that, you feel comfortable stepping up, because a lot of people would have, definitely kept quiet. Welcome to the Go Fish Village podcast. As a Chinese proverb says, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. At Go Fish, our goal is to teach individuals just like you how to build wealth through real estate. What advice do you have for Black women that may feel marginalized in corporate America or in settings? They may have ideas, but maybe not comfortable about bringing them to light, or, you got these new terms called mansplaining and
mansplaining,
all of these other things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it, in the marketing space, I think it really is. People love stories, right? They love stories. So everything we do is about a narrative. It's about a story. It's like, how do you use the art and science of it? How do you inspire? Like, I tell people, like, when they're pitching ideas to me, I'm like, are you excited about this? Because I can tell you're not excited. So how am I going to get excited if you're not excited? And I think that, if you can show up in a way where you clearly know your business, you've done your homework, and you show up with an authentic and confident voice. May not every time, but for the most part, I think people will start to take notice, will start to listen. I think you're never going to be 100% right or 100% sure, but I will tell you, generally those non Black associates, they show up with such a degree of conviction and passion about things that they know nothing about. And so for me, I was almost like, well, at least if I say it loud and with confidence,
Yeah.
at least somebody will listen. So I think we just have to really get out of those barriers and filters that we put on ourselves. And, I think, and just kind of stay consistent and true to that. And I think, if you come in through the lens of being able to show how a company will advance their objectives,
Mm-hmm.
that's key. And you do it with passion, you do it with big, bold, creative ideas. I think that would be my advice. But you got to do your homework. You got to show up. You got to be ready when they look at you in the meeting. You got to be ready. And you may say, here's kind of what I think. And like I said, no one can challenge, because that's your point of view.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh, she always has something to say. So I tell my team, you were in the meeting, I need to hear your voice, say something, and it's like, oh, dang, when they talk, it's like, that was a great idea.
Yeah.
So I think you have to, kind of get your legs under you a bit. I don't discount that it's not always easy, but I think, you'll start to get the rhythm of it.
What about, have you heard of this guy, Kevin Samuels?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to get your opinion on him. He talk about this high value man and,
What's your opinion of Kevin Samuels?
I think everything is truth to everything, but I think that his delivery it's that shock factor. Like, damn, he actually said that. And then you're like, wow, okay, it's truth in what you're saying, but it's not, the delivery is kind of messed up,
I think you landed it right. So I think a lot of times you can have the best idea, the best intention, but the delivery, you shut people down. You shut people down. And I think that you have to understand that people are going to come into whatever the conversation, the narrative at different levels. And if you're not able to understand that and be able to position things in a way that doesn't take away from your position or point of view, but you're able to deliver it in a way that starts to remove barriers and says, oh, okay, to me, I value if I come into a situation with a perception and belief, and you're able to convince me, something completely different. Like, this is what we do. We're not in sales, but we're constantly having to provide a case for action. We're constantly having to now deliver it. We're constantly having to show why it's going to be exciting, why people are going to react and connect to it, and all those things. So yeah, I think for me, I'm aligned with you on that one.
I mean, what do you say to women? Because it's always statistics about like, oh, as a Black woman, you can't have it all. If you're gonna have career success, you can't get married, or you can't focus on family. As somebody who does have a family and does have career success, and you do have the good balance or the harmony, as you said,
right,
with personal and business, what advice? What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I think it's the clarity, right, around what makes you you. I think organization is key. Like, you can't, like, I am incredibly organized because I know every minute, every hour is I need to be as efficient and effective as I can. So I don't like to waste a lot of time, quite honestly, because I got things to do. Whether it's I want to just sit and binge watch TV all day, that's my choice. So what are we here to do? What's the objective? Is there a decision that needs to be made? If not, send it to me via email and I can read it and come back to you via email with questions, right? So I've really just started to put in processes and routines for myself that try to buffer and keep me, again, not just stuff just coming at me at all times, but I think you have to be organized. I think you have to really understand what's going to move the needle on the business, because you will get into a swirl of activities with no impact. And so I'm real clear. That's not on strategy. That's off. That's on, let's go do this. We're not doing that. Da, 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 da. And when you understand that, decision-making becomes incredibly easy. And, you know, it allows you not to get mired down in the stuff that doesn't matter. So I really talk a lot about, you know, I've spoken around this notion of marketing with a big M. Like, if it's meaningful, if it matters, it'll move the metrics. Like all the other stuff that we get excited about and personal projects that we can't let go, that won't move the business, you know, it's okay. It's okay to eat your young. That's what I tell the team. They're like, oh my God, that's horrible. But you know, we get so connected to things, projects and things. It's like, that's great, but it's not going to move the business. Like, go let it go, you know, go really do the big things. And then of course you can go work on a passion project for sure. But at the end of the day, we're in the fire of it day in and day out. And so we got to be very intentional and clear around what will drive success.
How do you go about building a team? That's one of like the hardest things to
It
me.
is. I think people discount building a team. You try to think about what your superpowers are, what you lack, and bring in others that can help round it out such that everybody has, like, you know, their unique capabilities, but at the same time aligned on what success looks like. So if everyone's kind of knowing what the North Star is and we can shoot, people may get there in different ways, but if at least if they're clear on the vision and the goals, I think, you know, that's a big piece of it. I always want people smarter than me on my team, because I'm at a point I don't want to work that hard, quite honestly. So I'm clear. So I think people really, really discount, you know, hiring a great team.
Okay.
A great team. And you know, I've gotten it right a lot, and I've gotten it wrong. And then you have to really be able to pivot pretty quickly. If you don't feel like that person can make those pivots, and you can kind of close those experiential gaps and help them build those capabilities. So sometimes it's just not, it's not, you know, the right call. And so you know, but it's a lot. And it's funny, I was having this conversation last week. It's a lot. I've had positions on brands that have been open for a very long time, and I was
Really?
willing to kind of jump in and roll up my sleeves, because I think you know, you're looking for something, and you're looking for this innate understanding and sensibility that school can't teach you sometimes, right? And it's just and you can tend to filter that out in an interview, in a conversation, especially if you've had multiple.
Why do you think the Howard brand has been like so dominant? I mean, there's so many HBCUs, but I feel like it's on steroids. I mean, even the past, even before Kamala, but now that Kamala is president, is
Yeah, I
super
think there's
crazy.
just been something enduring about the track record of the school, right? It's not this thing that just kind of came out of the blue. But if you think about the history of the people who have graduated, from Howard, and the consistency of it, right? You know, obviously on a global level, on a national level, but even on a local market level, like you can go anywhere. You're like, oh, you went to Howard, you know, like that thing, right? So I think like it's such a vast um, community of people who, you know, just there's such a depth of pride and a commitment to, um, kind of keep that reputation as whole as you can. And so there's, for me, pride when I first joined an organization. I'm like, I went to Howard. Now it's a little bit easier. Back in the day, it was like, you went to Harvard? No, I said Howard, like that thing. But I think it's the consistency of the institution over the years. I think it's the leadership of it. I think it's the cultural connection of it. I think it's a bit of a special sauce. I mean, I think you think back in the day, the talent that we were able to get for homecoming, like it was unheard of.
Yeah, that's
But I think
crazy.
that's, I guess, the whole notion of the Mecca, right? People always want to come.
Have you? I don't know. Have you followed Howard? Recently hired this Asian woman, Ren Yu, to head up Howard magazine. And I bring this question because you're obviously over at BET. I think if a white woman or Asian person was over BET, that would be a trending topic
We
at
have some
least.
Asians at BET.
But if it was chief, I'm sure they probably work in IT.
That's horrible.
No
That's
disrespect. No, I
horrible.
mean, I'm saying they're not in charge of like they don't have the final say over like cultural stuff.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, and not saying that person doesn't, she's not qualified, because I'm sure she is, but from a marketing and brand perspective, I mean, what do you
Yeah.
think about that?
Yeah. I think,
Because we know that she's talented, obviously.
yeah, and I think for me, I don't know her personally, quite honestly. So I can't say whether or not she should or shouldn't. What I will say, which is most brands, when they're thinking about things, there is strong consideration on the optics of things, right?
Right.
And you make those hard calls and choices, right? Whether you've got a talent partner who's now in the news for doing something, illegal or crazy, you're like, but he's been such a great talent, for so long. Like, what do we do? Like,
Yeah.
that's the business of the business, right? So you have to like make those hard calls. So I think in this situation, again, I have to take comfort and confidence that the people that put her there saw something in her and her abilities in terms of what she's going to be able to do and take that to the next level. But it definitely is a moment of pause. I mean, for sure. I mean,
Hmm.
it is a moment of pause. We often talk about, especially in our space and place, just given, all of the challenges. And I'm not saying that this is that situation, but we do know kind of, the nuance is always the nuance of things. It's easy to say this is the culture of it, but it's the nuance of the culture, right? And I think if she knows the nuance of the culture, hats off, right? Because I think that there's also, Black people that don't know the nuance of the culture. So I would say, I'm assuming that there was something really, really distinctive about
Yeah.
this assignment and role. But I will tell you the optics. I did pause.
Yeah. No, I just thought that was, she could be, it just, you know, but last two questions. So I know you do a lot of stuff with literacy is something that you really care about, and also women entrepreneurs. Can you just
Mhm.
talk about that work?
Yeah, so I probably need to update my bio. The literary stuff was probably something I was super, super passionate about, especially when my kids were younger. Um, I have pivoted a bit to more of the entrepreneurial space just because it's such a um, huge, huge unlock for our community, specifically women entrepreneurs who um, tend to be like 3 times more successful than others once they launch a business, but yet only get like 0.4% of the funding. And so we all know, and, again, the specifics around the impact that women entrepreneurs have, not only personally for their families, but the broader community. So that's a real, real passion of mine. While I'm no longer, at Sundial, I still have a lot of interest and personal time spent. Even when we do a lot of our marketing efforts, we do, when we're launching a big show, we do these very kind of high end influencer boxes that we send out. It's like, this crazy over the top like gift that we send to people. I use Black owned businesses in those. I try to do my part in terms of supporting Black women day in and day out. I have many, many, many dear close friends who are women entrepreneurs. I was once an entrepreneur when I started my own branding strategy and branding company. So it's something near and dear. And I think that we are all better for Black entrepreneurs as a whole, for sure. And I think that I'm excited about the energy and the momentum around what's happening in the women's space. We're just scratching the surface, quite honestly. Still so much upside. I just recently joined the Morehouse School of Medicine board.
Oh, nice, nice.
And the reason I'm super excited about that is because, the mission is around addressing health inequities. I mean,
Mm.
last year, you don't need a better case study than last year to talk about the health inequities and the value of having a highly skilled, culturally connected healthcare worker who, when I walk in, or when my mother walks in, or when my daughter walks in, or my niece walks in, like there's a whole different conversation that is had, right? I mean, when someone
Absolutely.
says, I don't feel well, and, no, because, you think Black women are supposed to be in pain, and you've
Yeah,
got a high threshold, silly stuff and
that's
crazy stuff
crazy. That's
beyond belief, but
ridiculous.
it's so real. So I'm so excited about being on the board. The work that we're doing in terms of advancing, and, the world needs more Black doctors. There's only 5% of doctors are Black.
Wow.
I mean, that's unheard of. So super, super excited about that. So I'm in this space right now. If I had to say, it's kind of this entrepreneurial, again, kind of really the COVID situation. Like, I was just immersed in all this data around health and some of our challenges. And if you go back to talk about, quality food, clean food, healthcare, like all of the foundational things that need to be addressed.
Hmm.
So I have a lot of personal interest and passion in that.
So what's next for you? I mean, seems like you still got some things you
Yeah,
want
I've
to
got a lot of
accomplish.
high energy right now, just because I think, what we're doing for in this space, I think is super exciting. That's a good question. I mean, I think,
Don't want to give it away, huh?
I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give it away. I'm excited about the future. I mean, I am excited about the future. I think that it's a great time on the business side of things. I think to the degree that I can help not only, BET and other companies value us as individuals, whether it's, executives to consumers. I still have some work to do in that space.
Got to have a lot of leverage after that
Yeah.
2020 year, though, right?
It's always good to
It's
have
time.
leverage, boy.
It's time to
Always,
renegotiate. It's time
yeah,
to
it's
renegotiate.
always good to have a bit of leverage, but
Yeah. What advice do you have for the 18-year-old Kim that's coming into Howard
wow, I
right
would
now?
say, like, um, it kind of goes back to my point, like, um, you're more than enough, like, you got it, like that notion of this is where you're going to refine it and build it, and make some mistakes and scrapes, but um like, enjoy it. The 18-year-old, like, enjoy it, have fun, and take advantage of all that's available to you. There are a lot of things that I look back on that I probably wish I had done, but I think, it again, I always feel like, I'm always where I'm supposed to be and things work out. But I would say just that confidence to be true to who you are. Howard, landing on that yard the first time, you're just like, oh my God, and it can be, exciting yet overwhelming, but just to sit back and enjoy it.
I love it. I love it. Miss Kimberly Paige, the boss of all bosses. Thank you for coming on the show today.
No, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining the HU Movemaker podcast, where we highlight folks that have contributed to the Howard legacy at the highest levels. To hear more interviews or purchase merchandise, please visit www.humovemakers.com.